inspired you to even begin trying to make video games or develop?
Yeah, I started out as a fan, like a lot of people do. So I grew up playing video games. I'm wearing my Zelda shirt, as you can see. So grew up with the Zelda series. That's my favorite franchise, and that's what really got me interested in games. As a kid, I started modding games on the PC. So I modded it, a couple of games that I had access to, and kind of learned about building levels and doing a little scripting. So that's how I got started. But it was a long time after that before I actually thought about doing it as a career. So I did a lot of other stuff in between. I even had a couple of different majors before I decided to really study games, and really like doing art as well. So I had a small period of time where I wanted to be a manga artist, and I was really into like the 2D drawing stuff. But I don't know, just after I started studying art and I went to art school and took a 3D modeling class, I really took to 3D modeling. I think that was really the start. I've just been 3D modeling ever since. And then that got me into the game industry eventually.
We do have a question. Somebody asked, what games did you mod initially when you were?
Um, there's a game called Duke Nukem 3D. It's an old PC game, and you install the game. And I actually didn't own the game, and I had a hand-me-down computer that we just kind of had, and couldn't afford any like PC games. So my friend had installed his copy of Duke Nukem 3D, and then when he left, there was no way to play it without the CD, but you could play it if you went into the level editor and played through the level editor. And so I used to do that, just play the individual levels, and then I started kind of designing my own levels, and then it went from there to modding, and kind of that's where I got started.
All right, so it seems like you've got a lot of background. You talked about making your own levels with level design, and then also 3D modeling. So, if you also, we know that you have dabbled in a lot of aspects with game design with like multidisciplinary work, right? Is that right? You've done like environment art, character art.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of everything. I did mostly environment art, but I did work for a company called um, NECA, which owns WizKids, which creates a tabletop game called HeroClix. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it. It's like so I did some characters modeling and sculpting for that.
Have you found it to be beneficial to be multidisciplinary, or has it like prevented you from specializing or like mastering anything?
No, I don't think so. I think everybody should have uh, a focus. So everybody should have a skill that they're really good at. I think being multidisciplinary, or I call it well-rounded. Being well-rounded is good because it builds a foundation. It allows you to talk to other people and work with other people at a company from other disciplines or departments, or however that company is organized. Um, but even if you are sort of like for me, I you know I think I have a good grasp on pretty much anything. I can do. I can script gameplay. I can I can code shaders. I can create my own tools. I can code UI. I can also animate and do characters and environments. But if I had to pick that one thing that I'm really good at, that deep skill, it'd most likely be 3D art. I think 3D modeling would be the thing I'm the best at. So when somebody asks me a question like that, I always recommend being well-rounded and getting a good foundation, but then like specialize in something. Take at least one thing to the next level. The thing that you're most passionate about, like could be coding, could be 2D art, whatever it is. So.
Did you start with like that specialization? So I think with like 3D art, and then did you learn how to branch off as you got more experience in the industry, or when did you start branching out a bit more?
Yeah, I actually started in 2D. 2D was my thing. And then I really liked doing 3D. I really took to the 3D is a good combination of like artistic and then technical. Like if you combine the artistic and technical skills, I think 3D is like right in the middle of a Venn diagram there, which I really enjoyed that part of it. Um, so branching out, I think when I really started I wanted to do my own thing, and then that's when I started branching out. So my last, I guess you could say, corporate job was Ubisoft, and I didn't enjoy it too much. It was a little too like corporate for me, a little too cubicle kind of thing. I wanted to do my own thing, and I knew in order to do that, I had to get good at other skills like coding or whatever those other skills were, so that I could kind of work in more of the indie scene, make some of my own stuff, and kind of tell my own stories.
Okay, so it was more like a personal drive of I want to know everything, so you learned how to do everything, but it's benefited you in the end.
Yeah, I think it's good to be curious and to kind of want to learn a lot of different stuff, and even not only just game stuff. Like it's cool to learn different skills within making games, but I think it's good to learn other things as well. So I've even studied like other languages and other cultures, and traditional art, and just a lot of different areas that you can draw inspiration from, not just making games.
Okay. So, have there been any favorite projects you've worked on throughout your career? And also, we like your Metroid in the back.
Oh yeah, the Metroid. Yeah, Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo is another, I guess you would say, influence on me as far as game design goes. Really enjoy it. Super Metroid was one of my favorite games, as well as Zelda. Um, what was the question? I'm sorry. The Metroid thing distracted me.
No, we were just, do you have any favorite projects you've worked on, I guess?
Oh, right. Favorite. So, um, I don't know. That's hard to say. I really like just doing my own stuff. And a lot of stuff I work on, I never really goes anywhere. It's just kind of my own things that sort of exist on my computer that nobody really ever gets to see. And those are really my favorite. I know when you start working at like a university like NC State, they really want you to put your stuff out there, and they want you to be like public facing in order to, it's just kind of something you have to do as an academic. So I have been putting some things out there lately, just because I kind of have to for my job. Outside of like my own personal projects, I worked on a game called Fallen Earth. I was a lead artist for Fallen Earth. Let's see if I can find a link to it. Oh, Fallen Earth was taken offline last year. It's sad.
Oh,
Did you see it? You see the message?
yeah,
After a 10-year run.
that's impressive
Yeah.
for an MMO.
Let's see if I can find like, yeah, the Steam page is a little bit better. It actually has some media on there. So I worked on Fallen Earth, and it's kind of an old game. So I worked on it, quite a while ago, around between like the 2007 to 2010 time frame is when I worked on it as a lead artist. And that was one of my favorite projects. I think because I got to do a lot of experimenting with it. It was just kind of like, it was one of those games, for better or worse, where it's just kind of a catch-all for everything. Trying to think of like an analogy for it. Kind of like, there's some animes, or there's some like comic book stuff where it's just everything. You have monsters, you have sci-fi, you have fantasy, you know what I'm saying? You have just all kinds. So it was one of those things which is really fun. So on one end, you're doing post-apocalyptic environments, and then you get to do some monsters. and then you get to do some like dune buggies with like machine guns on top. So there's a lot of different stuff that you get to do. So that one is my favorite, and I had a lot of really close friends I worked with on that game. So that's another reason why it's not the best game. Definitely not the best game, but it was fun to work on it.
Do you have like a website that we could check out, or that you share your work or the projects you choose to share?
I can screen share and go through some stuff.
Okay.
I have like a collection of pieces that I used to apply for the NC State gig. That's about all I got. I'm not a very public person, but I can pull that up real quick.
Someone asked, what keeps you from showing your projects off? Why are you so secretive?
It's not really secretive. It's just, I mean, I do show them off. So I'll show you some stuff that I've shown off. Just let me pull up a couple of things real quick. I just like to make stuff, and it's not always about like putting, it's not always about like getting the recognition or winning awards or anything like that. So I work really closely with the department chair of art design, and he's the opposite. We're opposites. He's making videos, he's doing interviews, he's putting his stuff all over the place, and he's like, he's one of those people that can get, he can get people investing in his stuff, and he's very outgoing. And then I'm the opposite, and he's always telling me, he's like, oh, you gotta get out there, man, you gotta show your stuff. Like, yeah, so I put this together. It has a couple of pieces. I have some 3D art here that I can show you. This is like a little tiny world game demo I made. So I made all the environment art for this by hand, just modeled it and textured it with Maya, ZBrush, and Substance Painter. So this is viewable in VR. You can look at it and you're like, kind of the idea was like, it'd be cool to be like this tiny thing and you can see this like tiny world kind of close up. Some wireframes. I have some character models I made, a couple of character busts I made using 3D Studio Max and ZBrush. A couple of little environments. So this is like a little retro library environment, going for like a kind of a low poly retro style. I used I kind of experimented with a new program called Houdini for this one. It's a lunchbox. 3D model of a lunchbox that I own from back in the day. So back when metal lunchboxes were legal, back in the early, yeah.
Are they not legal?
No, I don't think they are. I think they're illegal now because kids were like hitting each other with them on the playground or something. I don't know. Some character animations that I did for a little game jam. I do these like little game jams from time to time. So these like character animations for like a game jam. Maybe not. There you go. A couple of animations. Another character here. There we go. This one has sound. And then here's a couple of other various 3D modeling pieces from this. A lot of this is from Fallen Earth, like kind of the post-apocalyptic environments like this. And these scenes here, kind of derelict environments. This is like a little thing I made, like a really low poly challenge I did for gameartisans.org, which I don't think that website exists anymore. So stuff like that. I have some 2D stuff. Character concepts for a game. I worked on a game called Maker's Tale, did a character concept for that. Some UI design. This is for a company called Robot, what are they called? Elephant Mouse. So this is a game called Robots Need Love 2. And I designed some UI for Robots Need Love 2. Did some interactive backgrounds for a theater show. That this play was based on a video game. Some 2D art that I've done and just sketching some 2D stuff in my sketchbook. That's about it. So I have some interactive stuff here. Oh yeah, I have it right here. I had it open, but so this is something I made over the summer. I'm working on a Kendo VR game for the Oculus Quest, and I've been trying to So I made this prototype over the summer. I did everything. I did all the coding and modeling and everything for it. So it's all from scratch. And the startup company I work with, we designed these like these things right here, these like VR peripherals, and you can put the VR controllers in them. Yeah. Anyway, I don't have anything. But anyway, you put the VR controllers in these, and then you can see you can stick them together, and that gives you like two-handed movement, so you can hold swords and weapons and other things with two hands. So I can just play this video for you all if you can see it. So it's kind of me on one side and the game on the other side. Let me see if I can get a good quality. See if I can get a good quality out of it. So this is just getting the feel of the sword, getting some feedback when you hit it, when you hit the dummy. Just doing like being able to touch different parts of the dummy with the sword. So you have like an instructor in there kind of showing you how to do stuff inside of a dojo. So this was the prototype I made to try to get people interested in it so that we could turn it into something actually finished rather than just like a really quick demo. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. Yeah. So I'm also doing like landscape design research using Unreal. So there's some stuff there. Here's a 2D game I made. It's pretty funny. You have to keep penguins alive. So I kind of got in the mood to do some pixel art. So I did like a pixel art game. So you just kind of run around and you got to keep the penguins alive. This is for like a little game design challenge I did. I actually won this particular game jam, and I got a bunch of free software, which is pretty cool.
Sweet.
Yeah. So you have to keep the penguins alive. And you can also actually play a video game in the video game, believe it or not. It's very meta. Like you can play that game.
It's very Club Penguin.
Yeah, here we go. Let's see if I can skip to that
Where's
part.
that on fire?
There you go. So you actually play the arcade game in the game. So there's that. I think
What
that's about it.
What did the characters from your kendo game mean?
Oh, so those are like the different, like when you're doing kendo and you hit people like in the head or the face mask or like the gloves or the throat or the body. That's the name that for hitting those spots. Like if you hit somebody in the head, it's men. Hit somebody in the wrist, it's kote, and then the throat is do. So there's just different terms for different parts that you hit. So those kind of pop up so that you can hit those particular areas. I don't really know much about kendo. I just have like, I actually met a kendo instructor who's gonna help like authenticate the experience. So it's not just me like messing around. Let's see what else. Oh, I do have this. So Megan has seen this before.
Yeah.
So I made this as part of a modeling demo for the class that Megan's in, which is pretty fun to make. This is like a little diorama. Yeah. Some toads eating some ramen. I think that's all I got on hand. I didn't really prepare very well, so I have
no, that's okay. Do you use any strategies for seeing projects through to the end, instead of stopping early, or you just some projects you finish and some of them you don't?
I think just being, I don't know. So from my experience working on projects, it's always the last, I don't know, like 20%. That's the hardest to finish. So for me, I get really excited about new projects. I'm kind of like addicted to starting new projects. I love starting new stuff. So I have to like stop myself from doing that. But in the beginning, it's really easy to get going and making like a ton of progress early on. And then eventually you just get to the point you're like, oh my God, like there's like bugs to fix, and you always forget about all the little things you need to do. I don't know. It's just really hard to push through. So I don't know. I don't really have a strategy. I try to do stuff I'm really like excited and passionate about. I think that definitely helps kind of push through the, if when things get stagnant, it helps you push through. Um, yeah, I guess I don't really have a good answer for that, but maybe just mental discipline to
Yeah,
just get it done, get through it.
yeah. I guess in my experience, I'm also the same. I like to start a lot of things. So I just start making a list of all the projects I would like to do, and I'll just rotate them out once my board of current projects has a slot open.
Yeah. I do know if you ever feel like you can never finish anything, I think that might be a sign that the things you do, the scope is too big. And maybe you have to start pulling back the scope on some of your projects so you can finish them. I know that's definitely a thing, especially with students. And I was the same way when I was a student. I was like, oh, I'm gonna make, this awesome thing. And then, once you actually start doing it, you're like, oh, there's no way I can finish this.
So um as a student, or back when you were a student, um where what did you do in college that prepared you for working in the industry, or what did you wish you knew before going into the industry?
Sure. I'm actually still in a student, believe it or not. Yeah. I'm I'm working on my doctorate degree, so I am a student of sorts. Actually, by the time you're getting your doctorate, you're not really a student anymore. You're just like you're basically just paying the school to force yourself to read and write a lot. But anyway, um, so in school, I think something that really helped me was working on outside projects. I think you have to, and I don't know how many of you are sort of in this club for fun, for a hobby, or for like a career aspiration. So I guess I'll speak more to like the career aspiration part, but just doing side projects is really good. It helps supplement like what you're actually learning. I think you learn more doing your own thing on the side, if that makes sense. Well, maybe not more, but different, uh, not more in the sense of like more than you learn in school, but more stuff you learn. Just because like school, it's very like, here's some skills, here's some techniques, here's some software, see what you can do with it. You get feedback, etc. When you do your own projects, you're kind of on your own. So there's a lot of like self-learning involved. There's a lot of kind of discipline that you instill in yourself so that you can like improve and work. I think just like, the more the better, the more you can do, the more you can learn, the better. And side projects like really help with that. So I always had side projects going on. I started out going to like a traditional university, but back in when I was in college, we didn't have like, there wasn't a lot of like game design classes or digital art classes really. I mean, they had computer science, but there was no like game spin on it. It was just like pure computer science. So I actually transferred to an art school in order to do more like digital art, 3D game stuff. And if I took any class I took, I would do like the class assignments, and then at the same time, I would also do side projects. So like if I took a drawing class, I would do the assignments and then also draw stuff in addition to that. Or I took a level design class and then I designed a level for class, but I also worked on my own level on the side as well. So always like try to find some extra stuff to kind of do. I think that would be the best. And I think also just be willing to learn things besides just like making games or just game related stuff. I think people really miss out on that. And um, coming from so the school I taught at before coming to NC State was a liberal arts school, and there was a lot of like other things people had to take, and it's very common for students to get annoyed, like, oh, I have to take like history, I got to take writing, I have to take this and that. But I think that stuff's important because that's where you get inspiration from. Like a game like Skyrim is inspired by like Norse history and Norse architecture. You know, those kind of things come into it. You know, there's a lot of games like the Zelda series borrows from like Japanese mythology. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can learn from outside of just games to get inspiration and look at architecture, read architecture books. So when you're designing levels, you know, you can design really cool levels by sort of taking principles from architecture and implementing it in. If you can do that kind of stuff, people will think you're really smart. And your designs will be a lot better. Your games will be a lot more fun. So definitely that's another thing. So those are the two things: side projects and learn more stuff outside of games.
I was going to bridge off of you part of that self-education you talked about. What are do you have any like particularly favorite resources that you use to like educate or inform or inspire yourself, or particularly when you don't know how to do something?
I think, yeah, it depends what I'm doing. It depends what I'm doing. I've been doing it long enough where I can kind of figure stuff out now. It's pretty rare that I have to, especially with like Unreal. Unreal is, I have a lot of experience with Unreal. So usually in Unreal, the Unreal Engine, I can just kind of figure stuff out just by tinkering with it and messing with it and getting angry, and then, you know, rage quitting and then coming back later and realizing that the thing that it wouldn't make it work was like one checkbox. So a lot of times I can just kind of like work through it myself. But I don't know, I think that's, so if somebody was like came to me and asked me like, hey, I don't know anything about making games, or maybe I'm a hobbyist or beginner, like where do I start? You know, I would say start with a platform, develop a skill. If your platform is the Unreal Engine, I think Epic Games themselves make the best resources. They have hundreds of YouTube videos for pretty much any tiny thing you could think about doing with the Unreal Engine. They do webinars all the time. So get it right from the source, I would say. And you know, I think video game development technology is becoming really pervasive in a ton of different industries and disciplines and applications. You know, depending on whatever your background is, you might find yourself somehow using game technology in whatever you're doing, even if it's not game related. So they've been using it in education and the medical field, in you know, all kinds of stuff. They use gamification for like training people. So I had a former student of mine got a job at the state government of North Carolina, basically like taking all of their really boring like HR training modules and like gamifying it, making it into like a game where people like are excited about leveling up and stuff. So you'll find, yeah, these skills apply all over the place. And so even if you're not looking to do specifically this as a career, like you might stumble into it. It might lead to something kind of related. You can bridge your areas of interest together. So that's a good point. I know at NC State, I've been collaborating and talking to a lot of people from like architecture and landscape architecture, and just showing them really, really basic stuff in Unreal. They think like, I don't know, have like a superpower. And it's like, this is, and I really, it's like, this is basic Unreal stuff. And they're like blown away by it. So I think it's definitely good for your resume, I would say, no matter what field you're in, for sure.
That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Let's talk about. All right. Earlier, you mentioned how I think it was Ubisoft that you had worked at, and that you didn't really like it that much. I think, and so how different is it working at like a AAA studio versus an indie studio for like work culture or workflow?
Yeah, there's different tiers of studios. There's true indie, which is like a group of friends working, like moonlighting after hours, right? That's like the true indie experience. And then you have like smaller companies that are indie companies, but they're really not. They're just smaller companies. I think in those smaller companies, you have a culture where people are more generalists. You kind of have to wear a lot of hats. You have to be flexible. They tend to be kind of, I don't know, I think a little more creative in some senses because a lot of people are doing like a lot of different things. I think with a lot of indie games, you have to push creativity to kind of break through some of the huge like AAA titles and really, really focus on like the gameplay. So I saw when I came in, somebody was doing like an Among Us like character, right? I saw that on the screen. Like that's a perfect example of a game um, that focuses on gameplay as a way to break through, like just like a creative kind of has like a unique art style, simple art style, but then it still breaks through. So those creative indie games are it's interesting. You have to be kind of a jack of all. I think that's where the multidisciplinary comes in. The big companies are very corporate, just like any company, just like any office. You have cubicles, you have middle management, you have producers, you have the typical like crunch time. The reason I really didn't like it, it was so big. Like it was like so our office had like a couple hundred people working at our office. And then, Ubisoft is a global company. So then you had other offices around the world. So for, I worked on the Ghost Recon series. And for the Ghost Recon series, sometimes it would be like 2 or 3 studios working on the same game. So it'd be us working with like Paris and working with Singapore. And it was just, I don't know, it's crazy. So you were just like this one little like cog in the machine. So, I come in, I go to my cubicle, and I have this long list of stuff. I got a 3D model. It's like, all right, cool. I got to make like street lights and trash cans and doors and windows and just all this stuff. And you just kind of make it and upload it, make it, upload it. And I didn't feel very creative doing that. I just felt like I was just like, I don't know. And I'm not really into those kind of games. You know what I mean? So I'm not really into like the military shooter kind of games. I like more like imaginative, like fantasy stuff. So that's another reason why not getting to work on the kind of games I want to work on was something else. But some people like that. Some people like working for a company like that, and they can get a salary and they can get benefits. They can just sit there and model for 10 hours a day and call it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just me personally, it wasn't really something I'm interested in. That's really why I like being a professor, because a professor is like, you're basically like a professional student. So I get to teach people how to do cool stuff, which is really rewarding. But I also get to learn myself. So I always have to learn, always have to keep up to date. I get the summer to just work on my own stuff. And I can do full-time indie dev in the summer. I still do indie dev like during the semester, even though I probably shouldn't, but I still do. So it's cool. Definitely more of my speed.
That's super neat. So I guess with working through so many different companies and so many different years, like, do you think your perspective of the industry has like shifted from when you first entered it, or like what do you, I don't know, I guess, what are your opinions of the industry itself, or advice for people who, I guess, who haven't been in it yet? Like, what should we expect?
Yeah, so it depends on where I mean, it varies wildly from company to company, I think. So working at a place like Epic Games is different than working at Ubisoft, which is different than working at, whatever. So it's really hard to say for sure. I know the game industry, man, how do I say this? It's just hard. It's hard to articulate. It seems like to me, there's companies that are getting really, really, really big. So back when I started, all the companies were just kind of like a video game company is like a normal sized company, right? When I started in the early 2000s, like EA existed, but EA wasn't like EA is now, or Ubisoft wasn't what Ubisoft is now. Back then, Epic Games wasn't making like $50 million a day like they are now. So there's just these huge companies that are coming up, and they've been buying a lot of the smaller companies and absorbing IP. So you kind of have I don't know, it seems like it's moving in a direction where you're just going to have a few huge companies that kind of own everything. Sort of like what happened with like the broadcast media industry, how there's only like 5 or 6 broadcast companies and they own everything, right? So like Viacom and Disney own pretty much everything, you know, split it down the middle. So something kind of like that. I don't know. Um, at the same time, with like the internet, indie games are, it's becoming possible to make indie games and put indie games out there without having to rely on those companies. So, you know, somebody could make, I don't know, what's a good indie game that's out that's really popular now?
Fall Guys and Among Us are the
Yeah,
current
there you go.
hits.
I didn't want to use Among Us again, but yeah, there you go. So these indie companies can really permeate, punch through, because you don't need huge distributors anymore. You don't have to rely on those infrastructures. So I think that's cool, and hopefully that makes a difference, and that kind of offsets all the huge companies kind of sucking everything up. I hope. That's kind of my hope for it. I think that's where it seems to be going. And that's just kind of my opinion. I don't know, you know, this isn't like fact or anything. Um, yeah.
Maybe a matter
So
of what?
I was gonna say you did ask about what to expect.
Yeah.
It's just like any other job. So working at a game company is just like a job. You know, it's not much different than working at any other kind of place. You know, it's just you get to do, you know, something a little more creative than like you might be doing at a bank or something.
So, what tools, I guess, do you use on like a daily basis or whenever you're creating your games? Like, do you have different recommendations for design or art or uh, programming in a way? Like, what's your process like?
Like, well, it depends what kind of game I'm working on.
I guess let's
I tend
go
to,
level design or art.
yeah. So I tend to do more 3D. I like 3D games. Like I do make 2D games. Like you saw the little 2D game I made, but I tend to make 3D stuff. I use Maya just because it's what I have access to. Um, Maya is good for doing like hobby. It works really well with Unreal. It's good for hobbyist stuff. I get a free license, a free academic license. If I'm doing something that is like commercial or something that I might want to release, like the Kendo stuff, or maybe I still do a lot of freelance. If I'm doing freelance, something stuff someone's paying me for, then I use Blender because it's free and open source. Um, so those are the two, you know, Maya or Blender, depending. I really like Substance Painter for texturing. I like, I do like the Unreal Engine a lot for doing like game dev stuff. I have used Unity and I have no problems with Unity. I like both of them. But I started using Unreal back in 2004, so I've been using it for a while, and it seems, you know, pretty comfortable to me. It makes sense to me, so that's what I like to use. Yeah, Maya, Blender, Unreal, Substance Painter. I like to draw on paper. You know, so there's like 2D stuff I showed you. That's all paper. So I like to draw on paper. I don't really like drawing too much in like digitally. So usually I just do 3D digital and then draw on paper. It actually is, yeah, Unreal 2 back in 2004 is Unreal 2.
So when you're designing, I guess, a 3D game, what's your pipeline or process for like going from level design and environment art, or like I guess for either personal projects or if we'll start with that.
Yeah, so I really like to, so one of the most important things about a game to me is the user interaction with the game. So how do I talk to the game? By talk, I mean, how do I interact with the game? Usually it's a controller, but what does that interaction feel like? Does it feel good? Is it intuitive? And then what kind of feedback do I get back from the game? And that relationship, I think, is really important. And that's why games like, I think a game that is super, I don't know if anyone's ever played Super Meat Boy. The Super Meat Boy has a really good interact, like it just feels good to move around and bounce off the walls. And that's a good example. Breath of the Wild feels really good to move around. Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo. So those kind of like really nice feeling responsive kind of games. Um, I really like Fallout 4. I've played it a ton, but that game is not as good. There's not as good of the interaction in my opinion. But I think that's important, right? So I usually start there. So like with that Kendo demo, the purpose of that demo was to make it feel good holding the sword. I wanted it to feel good when you hit the dummy to make it like move. There actually is sound, and you have that nice like slappy bamboo sound with the bamboo sword. So like those haptics and that feedback, I really try to nail that because I want it to be fun to like swing the sword and hit stuff. And then from there, I focus on the space. So if I'm designing a level, I don't worry too much about what it looks like. I just worry about the space. Like, how does it feel to move around? Does the scale feel good? Does the proportions feel good? How do I lead the player through the environment? So what cues and clues am I giving it? Is it easy to navigate? Those kind of things. And then from there, I sort of start building in detail. I go from like shape and space to color and do some lighting passes, start adding detail in 3D models. And that's kind of like my general workflow.
So when you're a level designer and you're like setting up this level and maybe you gray blocked it, how much authority, I guess, do you know, like, does a level designer get for then dealing with the aesthetics of the level, or how much communication is there between the art team and the level designer when dealing with that?
Yeah, it depends on it. The role of a level designer and environment artist. Sometimes they're interchangeable at some places. Other places they're like separate. I think it depends. So Ubisoft, for example, the level designer and the environment artists were two completely different job roles. So the level designer would literally block everything out with like white gray boxes. Like, this is the space, they would draw maps, this is how the layout should look. And then the environment artist would take that and they would make art. So they would, 3D model and texture the buildings and um, all that kind of stuff, and make it look really nice, do the lighting, add the models in. So there are two separate jobs. I worked at a company called Icarus Studios, and that's the company that made Fallen Earth. And at that company, the environment artists and level designers were kind of the same thing. Like, it was very gray. So I would block out and design the levels, but then I would also do the art for it. So there's kind of like almost the same thing. Um, so it depends. I think the bigger the company, the more separate job role or job titles are. So if you work at a huge company, then you might be doing something very specific, where then when you get smaller, like those roles can start to like coalesce.
In those bigger companies, when you start having like, you have like the team and then you have junior and senior positions, how much, I guess, becomes like restrictive in a way, like how much free reign is then to the authority of like the senior position versus your own input?
Yeah, usually you have uh, a decent amount of input. I think at the senior level, it's more about like a vision rather than like specifics. So usually you have a decent amount of freedom to design things that sort of fit within the vision, and they'll let you know if it's not, right? So for example, like certain games have certain styles, and if you kind of make something that kind of breaks that style, the senior person might kind of help you rein that in. Say, well, hold on a second, this doesn't really fit in with like the style of the game, or it's a little bit out there. Or so it's more of kind of that, kind of just helping keep everything consistent at the senior level. I know some places, like um, I've heard at some companies from like peers and colleagues that some senior people don't really do a lot of art. It's more just like managing. Like, they'll do like sketches, or they'll do like mock-ups, and like, hey, I want it to look kind of like this, or here's an example of this or that or whatever. So
When you're working with a bunch of smaller teams, like what techniques, I guess, have you developed to bridge communication between like the art and the programming team, where we might necessarily, as an artist, might not necessarily understand what the programmer is doing, and vice versa. Like, how do you communicate when you don't know what the other's doing?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to learn a little bit about what the person is doing, so you have a base understanding of what's going on. It helps you build a vocabulary that you can use to communicate. Besides that, I mean, I guess just kind of being open. I've worked with people who can have a little bit of a ego, and it's hard to work with those kind of people, you know, like so kind of putting that aside, being open, being honest, putting the ego aside. I think opening those channels of communication can help. So, learning more about what they do, not having an ego, being willing to accept feedback is also key. Some people don't accept feedback very well. And I think that's definitely a good way to communicate. I think really just maybe involving the other person in what you're doing. I think that would be helpful too. Like, oh, I'm working on like coding this thing, and then kind of like try to get the person involved in the process. Like, how could they help out? What can they do? Show them what's going on. I think that'd be the best thing. So being as open as you can, and not kind of like you work in your little bubble and then this person works in their little bubble, and then like you put your pieces together. Instead, try to work like in parallel and try to involve each other and learn about what the other person is doing.
I guess that makes sense. So, like, if you're the artist and you understand how the programmer is trying to set up the work, then you know how to make your art assets so that it works for them, and then vice versa, you know what to ask for as a programmer.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Can we see the Toad ramen bar again?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I could probably just open up the scene. The
Pull it
scene
up
it's
and
Yeah, open
unveil it.
up the scene itself, maybe.
While you're doing that, what's your favorite game?
Um, my favorite game isn't necessarily the best game, because favorite is like there's other things involved in the equation, right? So it'd
Yeah.
probably be Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, which isn't like the best game. It's very good, but there's only so much you can do in a game like that for the Super Nintendo. But yeah, I think it has just other things attached to it, like nostalgic feelings and different things like that make it my favorite.
What games do you think have the best art slash modeling?
I really like stuff that Naughty Dog and Insomniac put out. Those two game companies, like The Last of Us, has really good artwork. I don't know if, and then yes, like believe it or not, like some of the new Ratchet and Clank stuff is really really solid, like art wise. Like look at their concept art. People might sleep on it, but those two companies put out some really really good art that I like to see. I also like stuff by I used to like stuff by Square Enix, like Final Fantasy, but that stuff just gets getting too weird for me.
It's
I'm
good.
getting yeah, I'm getting too old. Like I don't know, I don't want to play a game that's like a 16-year-old, like skinny, whiny Japanese teenager. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not the kind of character I want to play as anymore.
Not a Kingdom Hearts fan then, huh?
Well, I like Kingdom Hearts is different. Kingdom Hearts is a little different.
Oh.
Yeah, has a different flavor to it, but like I want a Final Fantasy game where you play like an old grizzled dude, like an old grizzled veteran. You know what I mean? Instead of like I don't know. I really like Final Fantasy VII. I want to play the remake. That was that was during like the golden age of my game playing time era. The Final Fantasy VII was. But then again, when I played Final Fantasy VII, I was young, so it was cool to play like that kind of character. But now it's like,
More games where you could play as a villain would be neat.
yeah, yeah. I like villains that are complicated. They're bad, but they have like a reason behind it. Yeah, here's the Toad thing. This is what it looks like in Unreal. The Toad ramen bar. This was just the modeling demo I made for class, showing them. They had to make like a little diorama, like tell a little story or something. This was like my class demo, which turned out pretty nice. I threw it in Unreal, so it looks a little better than just like a Maya render, I guess.
I apologize if you've said before, but could you remind me what class you teach?
Digital modeling. I teach digital modeling, which I guess is 3D modeling. That's my impression. So I teach 3D modeling. And so I'm new. Like, this is my first semester at NC State. So they just kind of threw me right into it. And then I also teach an interactive studio. So the studio is focused on interactive technology, and we're using Unreal in that class to create different kind of interactive stuff. And people are doing different stuff in that class. That one I really wanted to do some VR stuff, but doing VR like remote has been challenging, I think. So it's mostly just like kind of like gamey stuff or maybe simulation kind of stuff. Yeah, I went really crazy. I went really crazy on the skin. You can see. Let's see, I can zoom out. I put a lot of detail in the skin. I even modeled like the actual ramen itself in the bowl. Yeah, it's fun.
There's one last question. What are some of the resources on campus, I guess you would recommend making use of if you know of them?
Yeah, resources for what?
Ashwin. Game dev in general.
Yeah. Game dev and resources on campus. You know, honestly, I don't really know. Honestly, I don't know. Megan might even know more than me with resources for game dev, because like I said, I'm new. I'm just coming in. This is my first semester. So I'm really trying to learn about what kind of resources we have on campus. You know, you guys have this club, which I think is a good resource. I was hired in the art design department because they wanted to kind of bring somebody with my background in, do some game stuff. But I don't really feel like there's a place yet for that in art design. That's just me. Like, you know, there's not a lot of classes that are game classes. You know, I teach digital modeling, which is related. I teach the interactive studio, which is related. But there's not a strong like game like concentration yet, right? I think they might be moving in that direction, or at least making like game design or game development sort of a part of some of their themes, like their themed studios, which I think is cool. So right now I don't really know a whole lot about it, about like the kind of resources there are. I know that, you know, there's a lot of VR. If you're interested in VR game dev, you know, the library has VR headsets you can use. Delta has VR headsets you can use. So yeah, I don't know. I know like if you can make it up to Brooks, they have that like IT lab with like the Cintiqs, which is like a really nice lab to work in because you have like really fast computers. I think they have 280s with Cintiq monitors in that lab, which is pretty good for game dev stuff. Do you mean like learning game dev? I know that as an NC State student, you do have free access to LinkedIn Learning. And LinkedIn Learning has a lot of like game dev stuff just to get like some basics down. You know, you're not gonna become a rock star by doing LinkedIn Learning or anything, but it's good just for some basic stuff. Like, hey, I want to learn just basic like 3D modeling with Maya. It'll get you there. I want to learn basic Unity, basic Unreal. It has all that basic stuff. And then from there, you can graduate to some more advanced stuff you might find elsewhere.
Okay. Well, we are at 9:03. So, yeah, thank you for the link, Will. Anybody has any, I don't know, desperate last minute questions, but that might be it. So, thank you, Justin, for taking the time to talk with us. We really appreciate it. You gave us some really good insights. So,
Yeah.
I just really appreciate it. Mostly last minute thing.
Yeah, no problem. If anybody, wants to send me something for some feedback or ask me some more questions, feel free to do so. I'm typing my email in the chat, so you can send me an email or anything. I'd be happy to chat with you or give you some feedback or some guidance on anything you might be working on. All right. Well, I got to bounce. So it was a lot of fun. Appreciate the questions. And let me know if you need anything else.
Yep. Thank you, and
Yeah.
have a
Thank you.
good night.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
you too. Have a good one.